In Arunachal Pradesh, India has kicked off the major military drills Poorvi Prachand Prahar, the first fully integrated tri-service exercise for the state. Long a flashpoint, Beijing claims the Indian state as so-called South Tibet. Meanwhile, Delhi has signed a 10-year defense framework with the US amidst their lowest relations in 2 decades, ushering in a, quote, new era of unified vision. Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Kavat. To discuss these stories, we're joined by our guests. From Athens, Swasti Rao, O.P. Jindal, Global University Associate Dean and Associate Professor. She's also the print consulting editor. And from New Delhi, Shripana Pathak, O.P. Jindal Global University Professor and Director of the Center for Northeast Asian Studies. Swasti, Shripana, a very warm welcome to Taiwan Talks today. All this week, India is holding major tri-service joint exercise Poorvi Prachand Prahar, about 30 kilometers from the Chinese-Tibetan border in Arunachal Pradesh. Poorvi Prachand Prahar, fierce eastern strike, follows Bala Prahar in 2023 and Poorvi Prahar in 2024. Now, Poorvi Prachand Prahar can be seen as the first major test of India's new border infrastructure. The Sala Tunnel and the new Frontier Highway, which are about accelerating military deployment to the border with China. So, despite the thaw that we see with China on the social and economic level, resumption of direct flights and Chinese visas as investment, Swasti, if I could ask you the very first question, is it a different picture, however, when we look at defense?
You mentioned the Poorvi Prahar exercises, and please remember that the very creation of India's Eastern Command, whether it's the Army Eastern Command, the Army vertical and the Air Force vertical, it has been created to basically, it's a defensive command to counter China. We are worried about security from the Chinese side, and that is the very reason that this command exists. Every command in India holds a big exercise every 2 years. So what you see here happening is not something which is in that manner unprecedented, but it is a routine exercise. What is, however, to be focused upon and underscored is that this also shows the direction of jointness that India is trying to achieve. In India, we are trying to have an overhaul of our armed forces by way of theaterization. But theaterization remains a kind of a distant dream as of now. So what we are focusing really well and doubling down on is the effort to joint. The effort for jointness. And what you see in this particular exercise is that focus on jointness is very, very visible. So that is the thing that makes it so relevant. Mm-hmm. Now, just to compare it with all the thought that you mentioned, that is tactical rapprochement, because one has to understand that the kind of problems we have with China are foundational and fundamental, and you cannot really have tactical solutions for fundamental problems.
Mm. Shripana, in your view, is China's strategy of essentially salami slicing at the border, has this been put on ice, or is it just less reported at the moment?
Infrastructure is the new slicing tactic, right? China continues rapid border buildup. There's the G695 highway extension to within 50 kilometers of Arunachal's Tawang. There's the Nagari-Gunsa dual-use airport upgrade. There are Xiaokhang border villages with over 600 built since 2020, many 3 to 5 kilometers inside disputed areas. So these are the permanent facts on the ground, and these are harder to reverse than tenets or patrols. Now, there's a lot of selective probing which is going on. Yes, there have been no major face-offs between India and China since 2020, but micro-intrusions are persistent. So, there's a lot of diplomatic camouflage which is going on because Beijing has been using high-level engagement and so on. But the fact is that the slice thickens. And the thickening of the slice is smaller. The knife is now infrastructure. The cutting is quieter. India is countering with its own buildup. The DSDBO road, the Nyoma air base, turning the border into a mutual hardening race. So the fact here is, if you look at satellite imagery, you can use local Arunachal or Sikkim reports. They reveal much more than press briefings.
So India, the latest news, has launched the 3 garrisons on the Bangladesh border. Yeah. And ostensibly, this is about Muhammad Yunus's outreach to Pakistan's Joint Chiefs of Staff Chair, General Sahir Mirza. But there, of course, is the China factor in that. how do you think that China is working, perhaps through Pakistan, in this very strategic area for India?
A couple of quick points there, Lan, because in China's larger strategic calculus is to keep India destabilized. And what you see happening in terms of how our borders then, and many of those are very porous borders. Remember, we are always tackling, the influx of refugees and thousands and millions of them, and that is a Chinese way of sort of keeping it destabilized. The second thing is via technology. Please remember that India it was only after Operation Sindoor that India decided to launch about 50 satellites, basically to monitor what is happening on our borders. India has done stellar work in terms of sending teams to Mars and Moon. But when it comes to satellite communication and navigation, please remember China has more than 1,000 spy satellites giving a real-time picture of all of our installations, and they have shown no hesitation whatsoever to share it with Pakistan against India. So those are the things in which India, China keeps us destabilized. And the last factor is cyber attacks. I don't know how many of the viewers know that India continues to be the most cyber attacked country, and those cyber attacks are coming from China. So long story short, please understand that it is in China's strategic calculus to keep a hybrid front open against India from as many directions as possible.
Shapara, how, in your view, has India's China calculus changed? I mean, Swasti mentioned China's calculus, but how about India's calculus about China? How's that changed over the past 5 years?
Right. So India's China calculus has now shifted from shock-driven confrontation in 2020 to pragmatic deterrence with guarded engagement in 2025. The Galwan Valley clash of June 2020 shattered all the illusions of manageable rivalry because there were, massive line of actual control build-up. At the moment, there are 60,000 troops. What India has also used are S-400s, Rafales, border roads, transforming India from a reactive to a proactive defender. By 2023, there were disengagement pacts in Pangong and Gogra, and then there was the 2024 patrol agreement. These have aimed at de-escalation without concession, allowing some sort of diplomatic re-engagement. But the fact here is that infrastructure buildup continues. India's Neoma ALG versus China's Xiaokang villages. These reflect that India is prepared and India sees China as a long-term, if not permanent challenge. Economic decoupling has also happened, app bans, trade scrutiny, and so on, Quad Plus realignment. The attempt is to signal strategic autonomy. So India is deterring salami slicing, trying to engage selectively and preparing for a two-front war because China is proven to be the primary long-term threat while avoiding the rupture. Just to add a bit more, in the previous question, there was a mention of these three garrisons. What these three garrisons actually are doing, just to give you the example of one garrison, the Chopra garrison, the Kishanganj, they flank the corridor's narrowest point. The fact that these were built in record time, especially near the Chicken's Neck, shows the sort of approach which India now has towards China. India understands that India's neighbors would be used by China in malicious ways, be it in the realm of diplomacy, be it in the realm of military, be it in the realm of disinformation and so on. So the fact is India is now prepared, and this is a big shift from what we used to see in the earlier epoch of history.
Right. So would you agree that it's a thaw as a result of India's strength? Coming from a position of strength rather than from any, wish for or understanding of trust with China.
The assumption that trust can be rebuilt or that there can be any movement towards any sort of cooperation, I think that's been completely shattered by the PRC over and over again. When there was independence and China calls its liberation in the 1940s, late 1940s, there was always a hope and an attempt from India's side that let's start cooperation first. But over and over and over again, China in different ways, over and over again through myriad formats, China has just clarified that this cooperation is not going to happen. There's a huge divergence between China's words and actions. India completely understands now, and this is the reason why India is fully prepared to take on China as, a primary threat.
Swasti, given this, surface level rapprochement or, normalization of ties, for example, the visas and the direct flights. Now, given this is supposed to be about turning the corner on the Galwan Valley incident, how should India respond to any new Chinese intrusions? So very clear, defined intrusions over the LAC.
I think both of us are on the same page when it comes to sort of addressing what exactly is happening. There is a long-standing fundamental problem with China, with also, in the manner in which sort of Beijing expresses its posture towards India. It's very, very clear. I mean, I don't think there is anybody in India who's going to tell you that China has overnight become a new friend to India. I mean, that's definitely not the case. What we are trying to do, and I've been trying to explain that to you even in my earlier remarks, is that right now India is in a situation which is a volatile global order and a volatile neighborhood. And it is true that what happened between India and Pakistan has also necessitated a certain, military reorientation, a modernization reorientation in India. After Operation Sindoor, we see a $10 billion worth of modernization across three armed forces. There is more focus on jointness. There's more focus on, trying to break the siloization of India's defense architecture, which continues to be a problem.
But Swasti, if I can get back to the question, which is if China was to show a very clearly defined incursion, or to essentially take more land from India, given that there has been this rapprochement, how should India respond?
India is going to come fully down on securing its borders and its territory. There is no doubt about the fact.
So quid pro quo?
Oh, yes, of course. It depends on, India has always maintained its position that India does not look at escalation. India is not a country that believes in destabilization. In fact, India perhaps is the only country in the world whose rise has not been destabilizing. That's a profound statement, actually. So India has always maintained its intentions very clearly. The strategic intention is clear. But what we are guarding against is that should not be, confused or conflated with, having a weak position. The point is that when it comes to securing our territorial integrity, India is going to be very, very clear and will be ready with a befitting response if need be.
Meanwhile, despite current trade tensions with the US, Delhi and Washington have just deepened their defense cooperation by renewing a 10-year framework. Take a look.
The partnership we have with India, it's one of the most consequential, the US-Indian relationship in the world. And our strategic alignment is built on shared interests, on mutual trust, and a commitment to a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific, which is precisely the conversation we had. It was the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest. And this new 10-year defense framework, which we signed, is ambitious. It's a significant step for our two militaries, a roadmap for deeper and even more meaningful collaboration ahead. It underscores America's long-term commitment to our shared security and our strong partnership between our countries. We have a major defense partnership that is ongoing and made even more powerful by this agreement. So, sir, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
And this is what Rajnath Singh, India Defense Minister, wrote on X. This will usher in a new era in our already strong defense partnership. This defense framework is a signal of our growing strategic convergence and will herald a new decade of partnership. Our partnership is critical for ensuring a free, open and rules-based Indo-Pacific region. Shripana, if I can bring you in. So as we saw, Minister Singh used the term strategic convergence, not to be said lightly, given India's non-alignment, now multi-alignment policy. So is the situation with the US exactly the inverse of what India has with China?
I think the situation with the US is difficult, but it is not in the same manner as it is with the PRC, because all said and done, Swasti also constantly mentioned as to how important sovereignty is. And the PRC has constantly attacked India's sovereignty. The US so far has not done that yet. In fact, a couple of years ago, the US had issued a statement that Arunachal Pradesh is India's and is India's sovereign territory. I think the relationship is completely different, vis-a-vis what India has with the US. versus that what it has with the PRC. So yes, there are ups and downs in the relationship between India and US, but the progress is going on as exemplified by this 10-year renewal of this defense partnership. There are talks still going on. I think even today morning, President Donald Trump has said that, there is work going on in the India-US trade deal. So things should fall in place sooner than later. Problems will remain, but nowhere is the India-US relationship to be compared to what India has with China.
And Swasti, what elements of this 10-year renewal should we be watching most carefully?
What we need to understand is the larger shift that we have seen with our defense relationship, with America. After 2016, ever since we got the status of the major defense partner, non-NATO defense partner after 2016, and then in the 10 years that have followed, almost, you see that the India-US defense relationship is already to the tune of about $25 billion. So today, when you look at India's defense procurement, you should know that India is the world's largest defense importers. Only right now, Ukraine is doing better than us because of an active war on its front. So it's sort of importing more. But India has been the largest importer, and for the longest time ever, after 1947, for decades, our dependence was on Soviet Union and Russia. And the Indian defense establishment has been very, very crucial, in putting together new defense acquisition procedures. First one came in 2016, then the second one came in 2020. Now we have a new guideline framework in 2025, where we are trying extremely hard to diversify away. And the three countries that have risen in that 10-year span, of course, one is a traditional partner, France, which is now from where we're getting about 33% of our defense equipment. And then the next two are US and Israel. So there has been momentous change when you look at the India-US defense relationship. The problem here, Lan, is that under Trump era and under Trump years, I do not see a major defense deal going through, because the nature of what we want to actually buy from the US is also very clear. Of course, when it comes to drones, when it comes to technology, semiconductors, we already have agreements there, defense technology, innovation, all of that is fine. But we are not going to be buying aircraft, for example, from the US, because not only do they come with end user agreements, but they also come with several other problems. Right now, we do find ourselves a bit dependent on the US for the GE 404 and the 414 engines, which are extremely critical for our indigenous aircraft program, the Tejas Mark 1 and the Tejas Mark 1A. And the 10-year framework, which is sort of renewed every 10 years. So this is the third time that this has been renewed, shows the intent. It does not really show a signed deal. So that is a critical difference. But my opinion is very much the same, which is that India and the US have long-term strategic convergence in the matter of, when it comes to Indo-Pacific and so on. And there is no doubt about the fact that we will see this grow.
So Shripana, if you can help us understand, Swasti there mentioned, obviously the high tech that is coming from the US. What do both sides gain from this kind of security defense framework?
Right. So India gains advanced US defense technologies if and when this happens and it actually pans out. There are co-production opportunities like jet engines, munitions, and enhanced military interoperability, which strengthen deterrence against the PRC, especially along the line of actual control and in the Indian Ocean. The US secures a strategic partner to counterbalance China's influence in the Indo-Pacific, gains access to Indian ports and logistics, under the LEMOA. It expands its defense market through reciprocal procurement and technology transfers. Both sides will benefit from deepened intelligence sharing via the BECA, enabling real-time maritime domain awareness, joint responses to regional threats. So the partnership would accelerate India's Make in India goals as well, while allowing the US to streamline its ITAR, or the International Traffic in Arms Regulations processes, so that it could boost exports to a reliable democratic ally. Ultimately, the relationship fosters mutual industrial growth. Maybe under Trump, it's not really going to pan out the ways in which it could have. But again, that's something which is to be seen. Some progress is better than no progress. So this is a positive step forward.
Swasti, I wanted to pick up on something that Shripana had said earlier. She was quite, positive about the overall strategic US-India relationship. But are there conflicting signals when, we talk about the strategic convergence between the two in terms of, an expansionist China, but also Trump has has threatened, has issued punitive tariffs on India.
Yeah.
How does India reconcile these signals?
Well, the proof of the pudding has to lie in the eating. The frameworks, the strategic intent, the long-term strategic convergence. I mean, this is how we are used to be talking about international relations and geopolitics before Trump came. When Trump came, he made disruption the order of the day. So you have to take Trump seriously, but not literally, because if you started taking him literally, it will be very, very difficult. He keeps changing and shifting his stances a lot of times. Now, that's just one part. I think we are all in the same boat when it comes to how to handle Trump. The second thing is about the problem areas. I mean, I think it would be much more useful to really list out the problem areas, because we do have problem areas. Donald Trump had made it very, very clear that under him, there will be, even little room for India to exercise its multi-alignment. He's showing it. He has made India's purchases of Russian oil the centerpiece of his policy towards Ukraine war. We have never seen this kind of disruption in India-US ties, which have been put together with a lot of effort and a lot of, I would say, continuous effort from both sides in the last 25 years. So Donald Trump era is going to be an aberration. We have to manage it well. Number one, Donald Trump has made it transactional. He will make it more transactional. So he wants his allies and partners to do more. When it comes to Indo-Pacific, I have argued already that everybody expected Trump to be more inward-looking, but what he has done is that he has entrenched America further into many theaters, whether you talk about Middle East, whether you talk about Latin America, or whether you talk about Africa. And all of this has come somewhere at the cost of Indo-Pacific. Now, why is that happening? One of the reasons is the personal sort of that breakdown of that chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump, which is basically starting from the manner in which India sort of put its foot down when it came to the mediation claim between India and Pakistan. Now, in hindsight, everybody is a genius, and one could argue that perhaps India could have, handled it better. I myself am of the view that India should have handled that situation better. And one of the reasons why, when you see this lackluster sort of enthusiasm towards Quad or towards, the India-US trade deal, all of those are also coming from the fact that Donald Trump's administration, which is a very, very personality-driven administration, is not really finding the support for it from Donald Trump himself. Whereas you see him doubling down when it comes to Syria, Israel, Middle East, and, the list is endless. So we have to be more careful. I do see that restraint and that pragmatism on the Indian side. I am also of the view that we will very soon, after Bihar elections, we will see a trade deal. And if there is anything that brings the current tariffs, which are at 50% right now, bring them down to around 20% or less, it would be a major win for India. The convergence is going to be there, but we have to manage this short-term disruption to the best of our abilities as well.
Shripana, on that theme, you mentioned that this is a normal relationship. There's ups and downs. So, we have covered the relationship between US and India for several months now, and the feeling that we got from both our guests and also from the audience was that trust was lost. India's trust in the US was lost. Swasti has outlined, if there's a reduction in Russian oil buying, if the tariffs can come down to about 20% US tariffs, this obviously would help to ease the tensions. But can India's trust be regained?
India, in democracy, civil societies play a very important role. And the fact is that while the governments might try to continue working together because there's a common thread, there's a common perspective between Indian and American worldviews, not Indian and Trumpian worldviews. Trumpian worldviews are very different from US worldviews, and the world is adjusting to that. The fact is that democratically within Indian civil society, that trust is lost. To begin with, the US had a certain sort of history when it came to India. There was a point of time in which the US, the Chinese, and the Pakistanis were on one side in 1971. And cut to 2025, similar things have been witnessed. Now Trump also talks about a G2 with the PRC and so on. And that's the problem which the geopolitical order that we live in is witnessing. That being said, I think American foreign policy will outlive Trumpian foreign policy, which is why the US, there has to be some reason as to why the US thought of engaging India, and about 25 years across different Republican Party or Democrat or the Democrats were putting into re-engaging India and trying to build some trust. That sort of attempt will probably start again, maybe when Trump is in power, maybe after he's left the White House. That's going to stay, because if there is one country in the Indo-Pacific which has been repeatedly militarily attacked by the PRC, that would be India, the highest number of attacks. If there is one country in the world which does not economically rely as much on the PRC as, say, the West does, or even Japan does, or so on, that again would be India. So I think given all of those things, there is a common threat. The US and India will engage. The attempts to continue engaging is still going on. But yes, the trust which the Indians had in the US in terms of anything, H-1B visas, trade, and so on, and the hypocrisy which has been displayed by Donald Trump's administration, targeting India for buying Russian oil, not targeting the PRC at all for being the world's largest purchaser of Russian oil, that has hit at the trust. And given the fact that India is the world's largest democracy, it's going to be difficult. But nothing in international relations stays forever, so the hopes are still on, because there is a bigger challenge, and that's a revisionist PRC. So I'm still hopeful. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I feel that even after Donald Trump, the relationship between like-minded partners will continue.
Okay, we're going to have to end the show there. We've run out of time. I want to thank our guests, Swasti Rao and Shripana Pathak, for joining Taiwan Talks today. Thank you so much. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.